Well, welcome everybody. Today we are here to talk about and go through the Step Up UCI Bystander Intervention Training. I'd like to welcome you all and want to encourage you to think about different situations that you've been in over time where you've noticed something that maybe didn't feel quite right, whether it was a safety issue, it just felt uncomfortable, or someone's health and safety might have been in jeopardy, something wasn't right. And as you think about things that have happened in the past, I want you to maybe think about a specific incident. And when you think about that incident, I want you to bring to mind, how did it feel in the moment as you were experiencing or witnessing that particular situation? What was going through your head? What was going through your heart? What was going through your gut? How were you feeling? And then after the situation was over, also think about, how did you feel then? Did you feel good about what happened? Did you not feel good about what happened? Were you uncertain about what just happened? What types of things after the incident was over or after things kind of wrapped up? How did you feel then? And then lastly, since you're thinking about something that happened in the past, how do you feel right now, bringing those feelings and thoughts back up again? Do you feel good about what happened? Do you feel uneasy about what happened or didn't happen? What were the outcomes, and did you feel good about those? So that's really what bystander intervention, bystander effect, and this bystander training are really about. Getting people, much like we did last time with Behind Happy Faces, getting people comfortable with just what happens when we witness something that doesn't feel good for whatever reason, and how can we be better at how we respond, because that's really what this is all about. Just like we're trying to get better at understanding and responding to mental health challenges, we want to get better and have a better understanding of the thought process and response process of what happens when we see something we're concerned about. So we're going to start off with a brief TED Talk by Clint Smith, which kind of sums up how he has felt in some of the things that he has experienced.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., in a 1968 speech where he reflects upon the civil rights movement, states, "In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends." In an effort to create a culture within my classroom where students feel safe sharing the intimacies of their own silences, I have 4 core principles posted on the board that sits in the front of my class, which every student signs at the beginning of the year. Read critically, write consciously, speak clearly, tell your truth. I find myself thinking a lot about that last point, tell your truth. And I realized that if I was going to ask my students to speak up, I was going to have to tell my truth and be honest with them about the times where I failed to do so. I spent so much of my life telling people the things they wanted to hear instead of the things they needed to. Told myself I wasn't meant to be anyone's conscience because I still had to figure out being my own, so sometimes I just wouldn't say anything, appeasing ignorance with my silence, unaware that validation doesn't need words to endorse its existence. When Christian was beat up for being gay, I put my hands in my pocket and walked with my head down as if I didn't even notice. Couldn't use my locker for weeks because the bolt on the lock reminded me of the one I had put on my lips when the homeless man on the corner looked at me with eyes up, merely searching for an affirmation that he was worth seeing. I was more concerned with touching the screen of my Apple than actually feeding him one. When the woman at the fundraising gala said, "I'm so proud of you. It must be so hard teaching those poor, unintelligent kids," I bit my lip because apparently we needed her money more than my students needed their dignity. We spend so much time listening to the things people are saying that we rarely pay attention to the things they don't. Silence is the residue of fear.
So if we were live, we would have some time to process this video, talk about it a little bit, get some people's thoughts. But in this Zoom environment, it's not quite as easy to do that. So I'm just going to share some thoughts as you think about what resonated or what sparked emotion in you in this video? Because there's a lot to unravel. In today's world of social justice movements, we have an election coming up. We're in the middle of a pandemic. We have a lot of things to think about, and there's a lot of reasons that people may be struggling in different ways. And I want to start out by saying that this training is not about making people feel bad or guilty or shame people into doing better. It's about understanding some of the reasons behind why maybe we don't take action when maybe we want to or feel we should. There's lots of research behind why that happens. We're going to go over that. And part of the program is by helping you understand those reasons and the research and the evidence behind why people don't act or hesitate to react. That will hopefully help you understand what's going on and get better as you practice getting better at intervening when you see something you're concerned about. So a lot there. Christian talked about several incidents or memories where he wished he might have done something different. This is also not a superhero training. Just like we don't want to guilt you into doing anything or shame you for things that maybe you feel you haven't done well in the past. This is about getting better. But it's also not about putting yourself in harm's way. Depending on the situation, and we'll talk about various ways you can apply bystander intervention, you also want to make sure that you're keeping yourself safe. We're not asking you, this is not a superhero training to where we're asking you to put on a PhD or whatever role you're in, superhero cape, and jump in to save the day, but also putting yourself in harm's way. That's not the point. The point is there's many things you can do to make a situation better that may or may not involve getting directly involved. There's lots of things you can do otherwise. So we'll talk about all of those things, but the goal of the program is to hopefully help you be more comfortable and confident as you see situations and then hopefully respond in ways that you can feel good about. So this next situation, you might have heard about the TV show, What Would You Do? And it's a ABC TV show hosted by John Quinones, who actually sets up situations intentionally to help make people feel a little bit uncomfortable, uneasy, just to see what they do or don't do. And then with hidden cameras, he'll come out and then talk to them about why they did or didn't do something as they come across situations. So we're going to watch a TV clip right now from one of the episodes of What Would You Do? And it's on the streets of New York. And it's a situation where there's a little girl that looks like she might be being abducted or taken against her will. And we'll see how people respond to this situation with hidden cameras.
What would you do if you saw someone, especially a child, in trouble? Would you jump in to help or assume that somebody else would do it? Recently, we went to the streets of suburban New York and put some folks to the test. Last time, security specialist Bill Stanton put two parents to the test to see if what they've taught their kids about the danger of strangers would serve them in a real-life situation. Today, he puts the public to the test. With the help of 7-year-old Raquel, Bill staged an abduction to see if the public would take action. Raquel's mom, Deborah, watched from a surveillance van as Raquel was approached by Bill.
Hey, where were you, young lady?
You're not my dad! You're not my dad!
It's unbelievable, but they did nothing.
Help me!
Bill and Raquel repeated this time after time.
Hey,
Please, someone help me! You're not my dad! Please, someone help me! You're not my dad!
Still
Please!
no response.
It's frightening that nobody would help.
One woman walked right by, believing someone else would take action.
come on, go away. You hear me? Don't you ever go.
And why didn't she do anything?
You think that someone else will take the blame, someone else will take the responsibility.
A police sergeant on location to supervise was stunned.
I felt it was unbelievable that people just didn't want to get involved. They'd look, they'd turn around, they'd see with a commotion, but they just kept on walking. They didn't want to get involved, in my opinion.
Bill would have been long gone with 7-year-old Raquel. It took hours, but 2 men finally listened to their instincts.
Help me, you're not my dad! Someone 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 help me!
TV. Cops right there. Cops right there. Good job.
Okay, so as we think about this video, also a lot to kind of unpack and think about. Lots of different people walk by. And as you think about this video, maybe share a few thoughts in the chat with Natalie that she can share about what you thought or what you saw. But as you're doing that, I'll share some of the processing things. One, who pays attention and who doesn't? I mean, there's lots of people that walk right on by, don't pay attention, and there's lots of reasons, and we can talk about those, but who does? What I like about this video is at the end of the day, you know, it was 2 Black men that actually decided to step in and help here. And for lots of reasons, the media doesn't tend to portray that particular scenario. So especially in today's Black Lives Matter movement and social justice, it's nice to kind of see an example of that actually happening. So, and there's lots that obviously goes unseen, but that's something to unpack. And as you watch this, who pays attention, who doesn't? And one of the things I like to pay attention to that we'll talk about as an important factor is your relatability to a victim. One of the things that I noticed as I watched this video, and I've watched it many, many times, is the one that seems to be most concerned, other than these 2 men at the end that actually took action, is the little boy and his dad. The little boy kept looking back. And maybe it's because he sees this victim as a peer, someone his age, someone that's in trouble, someone that he can relate to. So that is a factor in how we respond in these situations. Natalie, anything coming in on the chat? No? Okay. But those are some of the things that people point out. But there's lots of reasons that people may not get involved here, right? It is a tense situation. We don't have all the facts, so maybe we don't understand what's really going on. Is this little girl really being abducted? Is this a stranger, or is it, maybe it's not her dad, but maybe it's an uncle, a guardian, someone that is responsible, but maybe truly isn't her dad, but we just don't know based on what we're seeing. So part of it is ambiguity, which we'll talk about. Part of it is maybe this is just a child acting out. I did this training for a group of professionals in Bakersfield, in the community college district in the Bakersfield area. And a woman shared, this happens to me all the time. My daughter is on the autism spectrum, and she acts out sometimes, and we'll be in the middle of a store and just randomly she'll start screaming and acting out, and I have to look or have to deal with the looks from people like, what's wrong? Will you control your kid? All those types of things. So she said sometimes you just don't have all the information and don't understand what's really going on. But there's lots of different reasons that people would choose to walk by and ignore it. The other thing I would say is sometimes we have to just put things in perspective and put them in a different perspective than we may be thinking in the moment. So let's say you saw this and for whatever reason you felt it was none of your business or didn't want to get involved. But then later in the day, either on social media or watching the news, you actually see this little girl's face, and there's now a national search because it was a child abduction. And now they're looking for her whereabouts. So what would you feel in that moment when you actually witnessed this and maybe could have done something? So again, it's not about guilting you or shaming you into doing it, but it's just about thinking about lots of different perspectives that might go into contributing to whether or not you feel a certain way or will react a certain way. So when we developed the program, and I helped with several colleagues across the country develop this program, we interviewed about 300 student athletes from across the country. It was originally designed for student athletes, but we have found that campuses have used this with many different populations on many different topics. But we asked these 300 student athletes in developing the program, could a problem have been avoided if someone intervened? And 90% of them said yes. So if someone intervenes in a situation that you're witnessing, then yes, it's something that you can make a difference in. And hopefully problems can either be minimized or avoided altogether. So it comes down to whose responsibility is it to intervene? And most folks feel like they would intervene and they're gonna do the right thing. If we asked you, do you feel like you would intervene in a situation? Most people are more confident in themselves versus if we say, do you feel like your peers on campus would intervene to help someone in need? Most people are likely to say not so much for other people. So they're more confident in their own ability and willingness to help, but not necessarily in others. What we're trying to do at UCI is create a culture of care on campus where we have that expectation of each other. As a community, when we see something we're concerned about, we want you to feel the responsibility and the expectation that that's what we do as anteaters, is help each other out, we look out for each other, and we will do the right thing to help someone in need. So it's about individual leadership and a shared responsibility. Individual leadership meaning as an individual, we want you to make good decisions to help those in need, to create this culture of care where it's a shared responsibility as a community that we will do this together. As we're thinking about this pandemic and trying to get people to follow public health guidelines, that's a shared responsibility that we all have to take part in. What is our role in not only following the recommendations, but encouraging others to do that as well and confront that when maybe we don't see people doing the right thing or following the recommended guidelines. So the bottom line is we can all do something as individuals, as a community. There's always something we can do to help someone in need and to make our campus and our world a better place. So here's the mantra that we use with the Step Up UCI program, that we're trying to create this culture that when you see something you're concerned about, we want you to say and or do something. And that's the basic premise of most bystander intervention programs. It's about intervening and doing something to help someone in need. What I like about our program that we've added is that a lot of other bystander programs don't think about, what about if you are the one that needs help? It's just as important that when you need help, you're comfortable and confident in asking for it and that you expect to get it. So that also contributes to this culture of care that we're trying to create, in that when you need help, we want you to feel comfortable asking for it. Just going back to the Behind Happy Faces piece, just like with mental health, we want people to take the stigma off of asking for help and feel comfortable doing so no matter what the situation is. So there's lots of variables that go into deciding if you're going to help in a situation. One, it's you, the individual. Do you feel like you have the skills, the confidence, the comfort to do some kind of helping intervention role? What does the situation say? Is it an emergency? Is there time to think? Or is it something that really needs an immediate response or decision? And then lastly, what is my perception of what the victim needs? Does the victim really need help, or am I just seeing something wrong? So all of these three things are playing at the same time, but what we have found through the research is that situation is really the driving factor. What is the situation telling us? Yes, we have to have the confidence and the comfort to intervene, and yes, the victim actually needs to need help or want help. So it's really the overall situation and assessing that situation that drives our response. So that takes us to the bystander effect. And this is the cornerstone of the program, because people are less likely to help when they're in a group than when they're alone. In other words, we pay attention to what those around us are doing or are thinking, or how we think they're thinking. Our behaviors are oftentimes driven by how many people are around. We're more likely to be authentic and make quick decisions and not think about a decision when we're alone or when there's very few people around. But as soon as there's more people around, we start to think about, well, what are they going to think? What will I look like? And those thoughts are what gets in the way. I like to say, oftentimes our gut reaction, or what's in our heart, oftentimes gets interrupted by what happens in our head and between our ears. So the whole point of this is to really give you some education around understanding this bystander effect and why there's hesitation, which will hopefully help you overcome that hesitation in the future and will help you to act in a way that your gut and your heart stay.
Place like this street in New York City. If you were unfortunate enough to be the victim of a crime or taken ill unexpectedly, you might think that surrounded by all these people, someone would intervene. After all, isn't there safety in numbers? Psychologists say no. Research suggests that often a victim is less likely to receive assistance when surrounded by a group rather than a single bystander. When people are in a crowd, it's easier to pass the buck. It's what psychologists call the diffusion of responsibility. Liverpool Street Station in London, a busy thoroughfare for commuters. Unknown to these passers-by, Peter is an actor. As part of an experiment on bystander apathy, he's pretending to be ill.
Help. Help.
How long before he gets help?
Please, help. Help me, sir. Please help me.
Helping would be inconvenient or even risky. He lies there for more than 20 minutes and no one raises an eyebrow.
Please, somebody help me.
It's always very distressing to watch situations like this where people are obviously suffering and no one's actually helping them. But what we have here is two conflicting rules. One is the rule that we ought to help, and the other is the rule that we ought to do what everybody else is doing. And here you have effectively a group of strangers who are exerting the pressure not to intervene, not to help. And it's very difficult to rebel.
Ruth, another actor, takes Peter's place. How long before she receives help? Four minutes later, and 34 people have passed without stopping.
Well, people don't really want to know. They just haven't got the time. Well, they have got the time, they just don't want to get involved.
Unwittingly, these strangers have silently formed a temporary group with a rule: don't get involved. They're afraid to stand out from the crowd and won't take action if no one else does. This woman has clearly spotted Ruth, but she conforms to the rule and does nothing. Watch what happens, though, when someone else helps.
You all right? You all right?
Yes, thank you.
Sure, you look a bit clicky, you know what I mean?
She suddenly finds herself in a different group with a new rule: to help.
You want to sit up?
She don't look well, does she?
You all right? Yeah. What's wrong?
First I thought she was dead. Then I checked to see if she was breathing or not. And I looked around and I couldn't believe that no one had noticed her, because there was a bloke sat there just absorbed in reading a newspaper.
This time, Peter's dressed as a respectable gentleman. Now that his dress is in keeping with those around him, how long before he's rescued?
Hello, sir. How are you today?
I'm all right.
6 seconds. She even calls him sir, and suddenly everyone's a good Samaritan.
Do you suffer from epilepsy?
No.
Why you're lying on the floor in the rain?
Because he's part of the right group. Everyone wants to help.
I would just hate to be in his position of feeling ill and nobody helping and walking past, so I'd just like to check that he was okay.
So this video demonstrates the power of people being around or not being around. and also our perceptions of the situation. We'll talk in a second about kind of our social identifiers and how we relate or don't relate to people, which also contributes to why we intervene or help or don't help. So obviously, the more people that were around, the less people helped. But then also the relatability piece and how we label people. One of the things that stands out to me in this is how we are quick to judge based on how we see people or relate to people or how we perceive people based on our different social identifiers and identities. So Peter initially was, dressed in jeans and a sweater and, didn't seem to get much paid attention to him. But as soon as you put a suit on him, even the narrator says, now he's a respectable gentleman. What, just because he has a suit on? That is problematic as well. So just think about all of the things that go into the decision-making process about when we do and don't help people in need. So diffusion of responsibility is one of the cornerstone pieces of bystander effect, meaning the more people there are around, and I look at this picture and think about all of the campuses that just came back to campus and had parties and gatherings are now shutting down again. Nobody in this picture obviously is wearing a mask, not that this was taken in the pandemic time, but I think about doing the right thing and there's lots of people around. Maybe they're, doing things that you don't approve of or aren't comfortable with, but everyone seems to be doing it. So we ignore some of the concerns that we might have because no one else seems to be concerned. And that's another kind of piece that I'll talk about next. But diffusion of responsibility means the more people that are around, the easier it is for you to say someone else will take care of it. So you diffuse the responsibility to help off of yourself and just say, certainly somebody else in this crowd or that's around will help this person in need. But the other piece is the pluralistic ignorance, which I was just kind of talking about. When there's a lot of people around, we conform to those that are around us. And if other people in a situation are ignoring a concern, or at least we're perceiving that they're ignoring the concern, then it's much easier for us to say, well, nobody else seems to be concerned, so maybe I'm seeing this wrong or interpreting it wrong, so therefore I'm going to do what everybody else is doing and just ignore it myself. So that's called pluralistic ignorance. So that's the difference between the two pieces. Again, diffusion of responsibility, letting someone else take care of it, diffusing it onto somebody else, and then pluralistic ignorance is ignoring it because everybody else is. Another piece is ambiguity. There's lots of situations where we maybe don't have all the information, like the little girl on the streets of New York. I talked a little bit about that. The alcohol issue is another one. When there's drinking, we all come from different backgrounds. Drinking may or may not be a concern to some of us, and it might be a really big concern for others based on maybe you came from a family that has alcoholism or addiction that runs in the family. So you've seen what that looks like. Or maybe you've come from a household where alcohol isn't even present. So you haven't experienced maybe some of those things. So you have a different perspective. So ambiguity plays a role in this as well, because how does society teach us to think about these different issues and how they're portrayed in the media, social media, so whether or not we should be concerned. Again, going back to the social justice and Black Lives Matter movement, there are people out there that think it's racism is not a problem and it's certainly not systemic. I'm not one of those people, but there are people out there that are adamant that that's the case. So we have to think about the fact that there are different opinions, there's different ways that things are portrayed in the media and in our society, and it contributes to whether or not people will be concerned in different situations. So it goes back to our environment, our upbringing, and our identity. Obedience to authority is just something to pay attention to. It mostly relates to the hazing topic. We tend to be taught to obey and listen to authority. And sometimes we get direction from folks that we should trust and we're taught to trust, but maybe those people can be guiding us down a path that's just not right. So when we think about the hazing issue, maybe you have a team captain or a student leader or an RA or somebody else that you perceive as an authority figure telling you to do something and treat someone a certain way or do something to someone that just doesn't feel right. But the obedience to authority kind of is something weighing on you as well. So that's something to pay attention to. And sometimes we're led down a path that just doesn't feel good. And you have to be able to stand up and obey your conscience and do the right thing and stand up to that authority if you feel that something is not right or doesn't feel good. And then there's some times where there's just willful neglect. You have to turn a blind eye, to use that catchphrase. Sometimes maybe you just don't have the time or the energy to deal with something in the moment. And that doesn't condone the behavior or the concern, but maybe it's just you don't have the capacity to deal with something the way maybe you want to in the moment. Maybe you're in an elevator and someone says something super offensive, and you have to decide, do I really want to confront this right now and say something, or do I just let this one slide because I'm getting off at the next floor and I just don't want to engage in this conversation right now. So willful neglect is something to know is something that happens, and you just have to decide, do you have the capacity and the willingness to deal with something, or is it going to be one of those times where maybe you're just, based on circumstances, you're going to ignore it right now willfully. So social and cultural identifiers are important because, again, we all come from different places. We all come from different backgrounds and cultures and experiences and upbringings. And that shapes who we are, how we believe, what we value. And that's important because as we think about the many things that go into our identity, not only are there primary things that we identify with, but there's lots of cross-sectionality of all of these things that contribute. I know a lot of people, and I always share mine because I know a lot of people look at me and the first thing you see or perceive is a white male. So I certainly understand the privilege that comes with the way I present, and I acknowledge that and I own that and know that has allowed me to lead a certain life that hasn't had a lot of struggle in it. But I also know that what you don't see is I'm half Hispanic, about 35% Iberian. Most of my family immigrated from Mexico. I'm also 10% Native American and some other pieces along the Hispanic lines. So that's something that you don't see, but is part of my background that is also part of my cultural upbringing. So family is very important to me. Things like that are very traditional with the Latinx, Hispanic, Chicano, Latina identity. I was also raised Catholic, and that comes with a lot of beliefs. I ended up becoming very troubled with the Catholic, not troubled, but conflicted with the Catholic faith. And I've made some different decisions, still Christian based, but that's something that is also part of my identity that you don't see. So the reason I share those things is there's things that you can see with people that are part of their identity, but it's also only part of it because there's lots of things that you don't see that are significant in folks' identities. And even what you see doesn't tell the whole story, like I shared about my own. So all of us have to think about all of the things that go into our identity and how it contributes to the way we respond, whether it's gender or culture or race. All of those things play a role. Some of the ways it plays a role is if it's a physical or a violence type of situation that you're witnessing, there's safety. My size, my gender, my values might contribute to whether or not I get involved in that kind of situation. Or do I go get someone else that might have more success in finding a solution to that circumstance? So it's important to pay attention to all of these different identifiers and how they contribute to our actions, behaviors, and reactions. So we've talked a little bit about what contributes to people's hesitation or lack of response. So now it's important to talk about what is the process to help you become a proactive bystander. So we came up with this 5-step, what we call decision-making model. It's based on research from Latane and Darley, and it's these 5 steps. Notice the event, interpret it as a problem, assume personal responsibility, know how to help, and implement the help, stepping up. So the first thing is notice the event. And this is something that we have to be better at. And there's certainly one thing that constantly gets in the way of us paying attention. Can anyone maybe throw in the chat what they think that is that gets in our way of noticing things that are happening around us?
Our phones, yes.
Yes, absolutely. We are so connected to and obsessed with our digital devices that oftentimes we're missing even just something as simple as the beauty around us. We have a beautiful campus. Our campus is situated in Orange County, miles from the beach, with lots of nature around us. Even something as simple as that, noticing the environment we're in, is often given up to our heads being buried in our devices. We often walk through our days just focused on the tasks we have to do. We're tunnel visioned. We're not paying attention to our relationships, our friends, whatever it might be. We tend to be very tunnel visioned and focused on our phones and devices. So I always encourage folks to just get better at opening up your eyes, lifting up your head, paying attention to what's going on around you, because we all know that people around us are hurting, but we're oftentimes missing some of the people that are closest to us that are hurting just because we're not paying attention. So if we can get better at just paying attention and noticing more, that will make us better at recognizing when someone might need help, which again, going back to Behind Happy Faces, we talked about that. So the next step is once you've noticed something, you have to interpret it as a problem. So it becomes assessment. And sometimes we don't have all the information, and that's why the graphic, the magnifying glass. Sometimes we have to look deeper. Maybe there's little things that we can't quite see clearly that we need to magnify and find out more information so that we can understand it better. So we need to assess and be able to interpret something as something I'm really concerned about or not. The third step is assume personal responsibility. If not you, then who? In other words, it goes back to that bystander effect. Sometimes if you're the only person around and you notice something, if you don't help, then maybe that person doesn't get help, right? So you have to ask yourself this question: if I don't help, then what happens? What happens to this situation? What happens to this person? And then how do I feel about that? So assume personal responsibility doesn't necessarily mean you have to take direct action. Maybe you go get somebody else to help. Or maybe if there's some other people around, you can ask if someone else can help or can do something. But definitely take some kind of action and assume personal responsibility to not just ignore what you're seeing. So here's a situation that demonstrates that. This video does not have audio, so there's nothing to hear. But as you look at this situation, this actually happened on a college campus. It was at Utah State University, I was told years later. But it's a head-on collision between a motorcycle and a car. So obviously things burst into flames after the collision. There's a woman on the ground right now looking underneath the car, and it's actually the motorcyclist who was thrown underneath the car and is now trapped. So as you look at this picture, there's maybe 4 or 5 people in the frame right now. But this woman took the initiative to get on the ground, find out what's happening under the car, where did the motorcyclists go, and what needs to happen. So as she's laying on the ground, she determines, as this video unwinds, he needs help. And look at how many people start to come off of the curb or the sidewalk or wherever they were. They were just watching just a second ago. Now, all of a sudden, all of these people are coming in, lending a hand to literally lift this car with their bare hands and pull the motorcyclist to safety. Now, I remember this because it was on the CBS News here in LA at one night. So I saw it the day it happened. And a couple of nights later, this motorcyclist came back on from his hospital bed and said, I never got to meet or even talk to the woman that got down on the ground that activated all of this help. But I want to thank her for coming down, because all of those people were just standing around waiting for who knows what, an explosion or whatever. But by one person taking that first step, it activated this 15 to 20 people that weren't doing anything just seconds before. So it's just the power of an example of when you make a decision, sometimes you're empowering several people around you that are thinking the same thing, but just couldn't get the courage or confidence to take that first step. So we encourage you to be that person. The next step after taking responsibility is know how to help. What's in my tool belt? What skills do I have? What resources do I have? And again, that's what this is all about. It's about building your confidence, and it's about giving you some tools that you can use. It doesn't mean you have to have every tool in your toolbox, and it doesn't mean you have to be the one using the tools. It means that you can activate others that maybe have a different set of tools than you do that might be more effective. But it's all about using the tools of taking action and utilizing the tools you have to activate the resources that you also have. So some of the tools that we want you to walk away with, because many questions are, well, okay, Doug, great, bystander intervention, I want to help, but what are some of the things that I need or will help me with having skills to help in different situations? So if you're familiar with the Green Dot program out of the CARE office, they talk about the 3 Ds, which is the first 3 in this list, but we took this from the Southern Poverty Law Center, which includes 5 Ds that added a couple of extra ones. So the first 3 are direct, distract, and delegate. So obviously direct means you take direct action. Distract means you create some kind of distraction. And then thirdly, delegate. You delegate to other people. You delegate authority, you delegate tasks, you instruct people to do different things. Delay, much like distract, means you just delay the situation as best you can from getting worse. You can create a distraction, that's part of delay. Those two, again, are very similar, but you basically just delay the situation from continuing or getting worse. And then the last thing is, maybe I don't want to get involved, but I can certainly sit here and document, whether I'm literally writing things down, I'm recording things with my phone, or I'm just mentally recording things in my mind. So when someone maybe comes and asks, I can provide my perspective and I can provide some information based on what I document. The other thing that's important is we recognize that people come from different styles. We know that not everybody is the action type that's going to jump in and take direct action. Not everybody has that confidence or skill set. Some people want to stay behind the scenes. So we came up with 5 animal styles that follow people's kind of intervention styles or personality styles. The first one is the turtle. The turtle doesn't like conflict. They like to stay in their comfort zone. They don't like to get involved in uncomfortable situations. They just kind of like to stay in the background. But what turtles do that's very important is they make great witnesses. They document well, they perceive well, because they stay back and they try to stay comfortable and not get out of their comfort zone, it allows them to really take things in great detail, and then they can share that detail with the appropriate people as that opportunity presents itself. So maybe an investigator comes and says, does anybody know what happened? Or did anybody see something that I haven't been told? And turtles, or those that stay in their comfort zone, can play that important role of being that documenter. Teddy bears are also someone that doesn't like conflict. They don't like to get involved, but they like to keep the peace. They're the ones that rush in. Hey, is everybody okay? Everybody calm down. Let's stop the violence. Let's stop the yelling. Everybody calm down. So their concern is keeping the peace and getting to everybody to calm down. Sharks are the ones that jump in right away. They don't think. They tend to jump in, and they're results oriented, so they want to get to a solution. Oftentimes that can cause more problems, but oftentimes it takes that shark that takes that first step that activates a process to move to solution. So depending on what action the shark takes, it can be helpful and sometimes it can be harmful. But it does take sharks to get the process started oftentimes. A fox is a little bit more intentional. They also like results. They also like to create solutions, but they want to have a plan. They want to gather everybody around, get everybody's input, be very strategic, be very intentional, and then they'll implement a plan. So they also want to get results, and they also want to find a solution, but they're a little bit slower, a little bit more intentional, and a little bit more thoughtful. And then there's the wise owl that likes to sit up in the tree, keep the global perspective in hand. What's going to be the best overall solution? So they're going to talk to the fox about their plan. They're going to observe the shark's actions. They're going to talk to the turtle and the teddy bear about what they saw and how to keep people calm and what's the best possible outcome or solution. So as you think about those 5 styles, in part 2, we're going to apply these things to a particular scenario. So I want you to think about the turtle, who again doesn't like conflict, likes to stay in their comfort zone, but also is a great documenter and great witness. The teddy bear, who likes to keep the peace, calm people down. The shark, who likes to take immediate action and tends to be more direct. The fox, who tends to be more intentional, gather a plan, and then take action. Or the wise owl, who likes to sit back, take the global perspective, talk to all parties involved, and come up with the best possible solution. So for part 2, I'm going to ask you to pick one of those 5 styles, because we're going to put you into groups based on the 5 different intervention styles and have you look at a scenario and how you might address that scenario. So this video is an example of 3 different styles. So as you watch this video, there is a little bit of kind of domestic violence to start. It's a subway situation where a couple is fighting physically to start with, but a few different people intervene in different ways. So there's 3 different ways people intervene. I want you to think about what animal style do you think, and what are some of the 3Ds that you see, or I'm sorry, 5Ds that you see displayed in this video. There's a little bit of, again, violence and language to start with, but then you'll see it calm down.
Whoa, 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 whoa,
Go ahead. On your merry way. Don't fucking follow me, stupid dick. No, you. On your merry way. You. Don't hit her. Don't follow me, stupid son of a bitch. Do not follow me. No, please sit down. No, this is not happening. You're not gonna hit her. Do not follow me. Already so many times. Okay, do not follow me. Okay, ma'am. No. You need to stop following me. So get on another car. When this train stops, do not follow me anymore. Do not follow me. Okay, she's told me. Follow me.
We got you on camera. Don't follow. We got you.
When we stop again, get off. Okay, do not follow me. Please get off.
All right, so again, get prepared to use the chat real quick. There were 3 different ways people responded. So as you think about the ways people responded, if you can share in the chat, or if you'd like to, you can also let Natalie know you'd like to just share vocally if you want to do that. You can share one of the ways someone intervened. So I want you to share what they did, what was their style as far as animal goes, and what do you feel the 5 Ds they demonstrated? Either in the chat or you can let Natalie know you'd like to say live.
Kat says, would the chip guy be a shark by how he directly just got in between the couple?
Okay, so we'll start with that one. So the title of this video is called Snack Man because he is a teddy bear is how I would classify him. Some people said turtle because he's not, doesn't like conflict, he's not really engaging, but he does step in between the two. So a turtle wouldn't necessarily do that, but the teddy bear is basically stepping in the middle, not really engaging, not saying anything, not looking either person in the eye, but is just stepping in the middle and eating his nachos, just creating a distraction. So he's keeping the peace as a teddy bear and just creating a distraction and delaying any further violence with his action. So that's one. So what?
Nice. Next, we have a couple of folks that have said the person recording was the turtle. They're documenting.
Yes, exactly. So I'm sitting back here behind the safety of my phone, but I'm letting you know from inside my shell, from inside my safety zone and comfort zone, we're recording this and this video is going straight to YouTube. So we got you.
John says, I saw and heard individuals use the distract and delegate tools in terms of intervention style, saw shark and teddy bear.
Yes. So the shark is the woman who came in, got between them as well, protected the woman that was moving towards the other end of the car, and told the gentleman at the next stop, you're going to get off and get on a different car, right? So she stepped in, she engaged, she took action, she started to delegate and assign tasks, but she also distracted the two of them by getting in between and making sure the woman was behind her and safe. So all of those examples show you that there's not any style that's more important or effective than another. They all contribute to stepping up and being effective. So that should hopefully make anybody feel like it doesn't matter if you're jumping in or not jumping in or keeping the peace or whatever your role is, you can do something to make a situation better. So the last step is stepping up. But sometimes you've gone through the first 4 steps, you've noticed something, you've determined it's a problem, you want to help, you have some skills, but you're just not quite sure you know what to do. So it's a matter of asking yourself this final question, of what happens if I don't help? And that might tip the scales to encouraging you to take the action that you want to take. Asking yourself that question, what happens if I don't help? And maybe the answer to that question is what convinces you to take that step to provide help. So this video is an interview with a graduate student, and this is the Stanford rape case from several years ago where a woman outside of a fraternity party was being sexually assaulted on the ground out on the concrete by the dumpsters outside of the house. And these 2 graduate students were riding their bikes across campus at whatever time in the morning it was. They felt like something wasn't right. They went to investigate and help this woman in need. Here's an interview.
Thank you for joining us. And tell me, what happened that night? Take me back to that night and tell me where you were, what you saw.
Sure, it was me and a friend, Peter. We were biking. We were right outside this fraternity house, essentially, and we saw a couple. My friend started noticing that something seemed weird. When we looked closer, we could see that the girl clearly wasn't moving while the male was. Then we stopped, started discussing it. Then my friend Peter took action and started approaching it. I walked behind him. We essentially called the guy out. After a while, after a brief conversation, the guy decided to run. my friend Peter chased after him. Then I quickly tended to her and then helped Peter restrain him until the police came.
So the reason I like this video is it just demonstrates again how important it is to follow those gut instincts. If you're not sure, just investigate a little further, ask questions or look a little closer. But this is an important case that may never even have come to the public's awareness if these two had decided, you know, we're just riding our bikes across campus, something's going on over there, but we're just gonna ignore it. That would have been very easy to do in the middle of the night, riding your bikes across campus. But they allowed the curiosity to kind of encourage them to figure out what was going on. And then once they did, they were able to address it in a way where one of them stayed with the woman to make sure she was okay, and the other chased down the gentleman and held him until the police arrived, and that helped this situation get noticed. So it's important to follow those gut instincts. Again, safety is a concern. Just want to make sure that we're not encouraging you to put yourself in harm's way if there's other ways to address it. The SEEK model, again, reiterating that point, we want you to be safe. The earlier you intervene, the more likely it is that you'll be successful and be effective. And then lastly, this is all based in kindness. Altruism, pro-social behavior, both of those concepts are about we have a natural human nature, willingness, and desire to help those in need and to make situations in our world better. So keep in mind the SEEK model, which is again, keep yourself safe, intervene early to be most effective, and base everything you do in that you're trying to be kind, not only to those in need, but to yourself. You'll feel much better when you align your actions and behaviors based in that natural altruistic human nature feeling we have. Perspective taking, sometimes we see on the surface, I'm sure you've seen this cliche before, what you see on the surface of an iceberg isn't really the full picture. So the better you know a situation, the better you know a person, you might understand some of the underlying situations of what you're seeing on the surface. Speaking of what you're seeing in perspective taking, we're gonna let you take a poll here in a second, but in this two-dimensional drawing, what do you see? There's a couple of things that are possible, and some can see one or the other, or some people can see both. So I'll give you just a couple seconds to look at this. And I will say that there is a frog, or there is a horse, or there is both. So what do you see? The frog, the horse, or both? So let's go ahead and pull up the poll. So looks like about half of you saw both and about half of you saw the frog. So those that were able to see both, congratulations. So the frog is what most people can see in the center of the page. It looks like it's sitting on top of the water. For the horse, for those that couldn't see the horse, the frog's eyes are the horse's nostrils. The frog's mouth is the horse's mouth. The frog's body is the horse's face. The hip joint of the left frog's leg is the left eye of the horse. The back of the frog's legs are the horse's ears. And then in the water, you can see the horse's mane. So now hopefully folks can see both. All right, so again, you can hopefully see both now that I've explained it. So in emergencies, you have to keep in mind, you want to stay calm, you want to gather as much information as you can, you want to keep everybody else calm, but the most important to keep in mind in an emergency situation is know your limits. Again, we're not asking you to put yourself in harm's way or to be a first responder or to take on things that are beyond your scope. So just know what your limits are and don't put yourself in harm's way if it's not necessary. In non-emergencies, maybe you have time to think and respond and get help and do some different things. Again, you want to stay calm. You want to gather more information. But the biggest thing you want to keep in mind is how frequently, how often, and how severe is this problem that you're seeing. That will tell you how quickly you have to respond. In teams and groups, you want to encourage groups and teams to talk about these things, talk about situations that might arise in high-risk situations. What do you do? What is our plan? What are our expectations of each other? And what are our expectations as an organization to intervene and hold each other accountable? The more you have these conversations, the easier it is to address them when they arise, because it's something you've talked about. It's not new, there's no uncertainty. There's a clear plan that you've already talked about in how you're going to expect people to respond and intervene. When emotions are high, it's the most difficult time to get to a solution. So the first thing you want to do is try to keep people calm, have ways to address conflict, but most importantly, ensure people's safety. We don't want people getting hurt. We don't want people putting themselves in harm's way. So ensure safety first, and then try to calm people down, and then you can get to effective solutions. Values-based decisions, we all have our own values based on, again, our social identifiers, the way we were brought up, our cultural and spiritual values. All of those things are important because it helps guide our decision-making in how we respond and perceive situations. So when our decisions and our behaviors and our choices are based in alignment with our values, that means things will feel a lot better to us. So here's the two questions I ask to kind of wrap up this presentation of content. So if a friend or someone that cared about you was concerned about your behavior, would you want them to say something to you? 100% of you said yes to this question. So the next question becomes, why do we not talk to the people we care about when we are concerned about their behavior? So as you think about the answer to that question, and for time's sake, I'm just gonna kind of share what typically comes up. People say, I don't want it to ruin the friendship. I don't want someone to get mad at me. I don't want them to get offended. They might misinterpret how I'm sharing my thoughts. Lots of different ways people are afraid of these types of discussions. But in my experience, and I'm not going to say it's easy, please don't interpret it that way, but in my experience, we build up a lot of fear in our own heads with what we assume people are going to respond with. We assume people are going to get mad. We assume people are going to be offended. We assume it might have an impact on our relationship, but really, we just answered the question that every single one of us would want someone to share that concern with us, but then we're not willing to share that concern with others that we care about. So if we take our own answer and apply it to the other direction, it's kind of just like that positive self-talk exercise in Behind Happy Faces. We have to get better at feeling confident and comfortable in sharing concerns with each other and not be offended by that, but put ourselves in the other person's shoes. If someone's sharing a concern with you, put yourself in their shoes and know what courage they had to muster to share that concern. And then this is how I kind of wrap these two questions up. If we can get better at two things, if we can get better at talking to the people we care about when we're concerned about their behavior, and two, listening in a different way when people are sharing their concerns with us, we will be much better at dealing with problematic behavior. Our world will be a better place, our relationships will be in better places, and we'll be able to have genuine, authentic conversations and share concerns when it's someone that we care about. And even if it's not someone we care about, you can still share those concerns by practicing this skill. So friends helping friends, I'm going to just cover this briefly now. And if we have time, we'll have a chance to practice this in part 2. But having that difficult conversation can be broken down into these 5 steps. And I've had many students tell me that they've used this with roommates and friends and family, and it takes that difficult conversation and puts it in a framework that makes it so much easier to manage. Not that it's gonna always go well, or it's not gonna come with problems now and then, but by using this framework, it will help you frame the conversation that starts with I care, and I see, and I feel. So I break it into two halves. So if I'm talking to someone maybe about their mental health, and I say, John, I really care about you. We've been friends for a long time. We've been roommates since our freshman year. And what I see is, it seems like you're struggling with academics these days. And I just know how much academics mean to you with your career goals. So what I see is you're not really following through on homework assignments. You're starting to skip classes, not following through with responsibilities. And I just feel like that's just not you. I feel like something bigger might be going on. So I'm not coming at John saying, you're skipping classes, you've got a problem, you've got to fix this, not accusatory, but I'm using I statements starting with, I care about you, this is what I see, and this is how that behavior makes me feel about the situation. Because now it's all about me and my feelings and its impact on me, and not so accusatory against the other person. The next two steps then allow you to go to, John, I wonder if you see this, if this makes sense to you, or if you want to make a change, because I know that, again, academics are certainly important to you, and I will do what I can to support you. I will be here to listen. I will be here to help find solutions, whatever those might be, but I wanted you to know that I wanted you to know that this is impacting me. And I want you to know that I care, and I want you to know that I'm here to support you in any way I can to make it better. So hopefully that framework helps you structure that conversation in a way that is a little bit more positive and takes a little bit of the edge and intimidation off of it. All right, so why do students intervene? So when we developed the program, again, we surveyed students, and the number one reason they said was because it's the right thing to do. It follows that moral compass, aligning values and beliefs with actions and behaviors. So I know that each of us can make a difference in this world, even if it's one drop at a time that creates the ripple effect that impacts those around us and impacts our communities, and hopefully can impact the world. So moving on, the last thing we're gonna let Clint Smith wrap up his thoughts since he opened us up. Let's see what Clint has to say at the end here.
I will not let silence wrap itself around my indecision. I will tell Christian that he is a lion, a sanctuary of bravery and brilliance. I will ask that homeless man what his name is and how his day was, because sometimes all people want to be is human. I will tell that woman that my students can talk about transcendentalism like their last name was Thoreau. And just because you watch one episode of The Wire doesn't mean you know anything about my kids. So this year, instead of giving something up, I will live every day as if there were a microphone tucked under my tongue, a stage on the underside of my inhibition. Because who has to have a soapbox when all you've ever needed is your voice? Thank you.
So I love starting and ending with that because it just kind of really packages the beginning and the end of this so well. Really all you need is your voice to say something, to do something, to make those around you better, to make our world a better place, to make our campus a better place, to make our community a community. And again, that's the goal of this, is that we get everybody to utilize this and do their part. We can make a big difference in all of those places. So we always end with this. We need 3 volunteers to share one thing that you pledged to do differently in order to step up. So for this, I'm going to ask you to just either raise your hand or let Natalie know you'd like to share. What I'd like you to do is just share your name and what you pledged to do differently as a result of this step up training. It can be something very simple. You don't have to, come up with anything very complicated. It can be, I pledge to pay attention more to the things that are happening around me. I pay attention to talk to my friends when I'm concerned about their behavior. Whatever it might be, just, I need at least 3 of you. I'll wait till we get 3, and there could be more if we want, but we always end the program with 3 people that share what they plan to do differently.
All right, so I pledge to, I really like the 5-point model of how to, like, that I care, I see, I feel, to when there is an issue that I feel like needs to be addressed, not to just sit with it, but actually have a conversation about it, whether it's friends, family, or professionally speaking, school related. Yeah, I like that model and I want to utilize that.
Awesome. Thank you, Natasha. Great, great pledge. Thank you. All right, who's next?
So I'm not always aware of my surroundings when I'm walking outside or hanging out. So I pledge to not use my phone as much and not be so distracted when I'm hanging out with my friends, and just be more aware and conscious of my surroundings and be more in the present.
Awesome. That's a great one. Thank you very much. All right, one more. Who wants to be next?
I guess I pledged to, open up the discussion more and talk about it, just because like you were talking about earlier, Doug, some people just don't know or understand like that them not doing anything has a great effect on people. So I guess just opening the discussion, talking to other people, letting them know that like, it's okay to like talk about these things, and it's okay to discuss these things because there are things that need to be discussed.
Absolutely. Dylan, thank you so much. It's important to have a reason why. And my reason why, many of you know that I'm very committed and passionate about this work. And my reason why to do the things I do and to try to make our world a better place is these 2 boys. They mean the world to me. And what I love about them is they're each other's best friend. And these are 3 pictures that were taken last year in a span of about 6 months. It just gave me reason to know that for these 2, I tried to teach them these lessons as well, to step up and be better for their friends and for our world. So the picture on the left is when they were teammates last year. David on the left is the older of the 2. It was his senior year. Robbie on the right, he's 2 years younger. He was a freshman that made the varsity team. So that was their first playoff game together. The middle picture is at graduation. David was just finished commencement, and it all of a sudden hit Robbie that David was leaving and his best friend and older brother would no longer be in the house. So I think the emotion just kind of hit him and he burst into tears. And I was just thankful to be able to capture that moment. And then the picture on the right is last August, about this time actually, when David moved into Cal Baptist as a freshman. So that was us helping David move in. So these 2 are my reason why. But the other reason why I use this program and love the work that I do, the emotional well-being peers know that I work very closely with the Helinski's Hope Foundation. The Helinskis are a family that used to live in Irvine. They had 3 sons that played Division I football. They all 3 played quarterback. Kelly, the one on the right, in the picture in the upper right, is the oldest. He played quarterback at Weber State. The middle son, Tyler, is the one on the left between mom and dad. He was the quarterback at Washington State. He's also the one in the picture in the bottom. He was set to take over the Washington State Cougars football team as quarterback, starting quarterback in 2018. But after their season, he took his own life in January of 2018. To this day, we don't know why, what the circumstances were, but the family decided they wanted to raise awareness about mental health issues and utilize the Step Up program to encourage student athletes across the country to pay attention to their teammates, pay attention to the needs of their teammates, especially when it comes to mental health issues. So I'm working with them and the NCAA and Ross Zabo, the creator of Behind Happy Faces. So we have packaged Step Up and Behind Happy Faces with the Holinsky's Foundation to take these two programs across the country and really encourage student athletes specifically to address the mental health needs of their teammates. And Ryan is the youngest brother. He is now the starting quarterback for the South Carolina Gamecocks in the SEC. It's a family that means a great deal to me. So I always like to mention the fact that I'm doing work with them with this program and pairing it with Behind Happy Faces. So you all know that you're part of a bigger picture that is a national effort to use these two programs in a way that's meaningful for student athletes. So thank you so much